Good evening from wherever you are attending from. This is CMX Istanbul. Sorry to sound a little bit like Eurovision, which was quite recent, but we are part of the global CMX network, CMX Connect network, actually, and we're the Istanbul chapter, which has been in operations for the last 2 years. And we are delighted to welcome Tom Norman tonight. A great peer, a great community manager, a good friend, and he's been so kind in devoting some of his time to us this evening to talk about something that is very dear for us. So before we start, as usual, for all the community events that we have at CMX Connect. Oh, by the way, Esra, would you like to say hello?
Yeah, of course. Welcome, Tom, by the way. We are really excited to talk with you about everything, basically, that we have in all of us. We have it in our career life. And I'm really looking forward to discuss this. By the way, I'm Esra from CMX Istanbul. We are organized with İlker, Özge, and Ceren. I think it's now almost 2 years, isn't it?
It is, yes, it is indeed for
Yeah.
2 years. And it's been what, September 2020, right in the middle of the start of the pandemic. We started this chapter online. Hopefully there will come one day that we will be able to, do some offline events with, complete peace of mind. I have a small presentation. By the way, Jaren's with us in the chat, which and I will present them, and I will tell about our co-hosts. So let me do this little presentation and then introduce our dear guest. So let me share my screen right now, which is something that you probably are just too tired to hear for the last couple of years. Can you see my screen? Can you hear me? Whatever. So hopefully this won't be for too long. So let me try and see. I presume you are able to see this.
Yes, indeed.
So
Yeah, we
fantastic.
can.
So let me just do this very short presentation. This is as per the custom for all the CMX Connect events. So tonight we are going to be talking about the support that you need as a community professional with Tom Norman. So this is a virtual event by CMX Connect Istanbul, which is part of the CMX Connect network. So some virtual Connect guidelines, of course, as volunteers, as people who just devoted your time, you don't really need to abide for all of them, but we'd be super glad if you did. So be sure your camera's turned on if you're talking. Close any distracting applications. Use the chat box to ask questions and leave comments. And grab your favorite snack or drink, which is what we're doing right now in Turkey. We have coffee, probably more likely, but tea is our national drink. Apparently, we consume more per capita than anywhere else in the world. Anyway, going back to the world, we have more than 60 chapters. I think actually it's more than 70 around the world. The CMX Connect is the largest gathering of community professionals around the world. It's a great network of chapters. Before COVID, it was, of course, very meaningful to have local events. It still is, but now we are able to reach anyone and everyone who's interested in what we would like to say and what our esteemed guests would like to say. So events at cmx.hub.com is where we live. So check out the chapters there. Maybe there's one right around where you are. And be sure to join them virtually or in person, which is now the case for a lot of places. So Connect, Learn, and Advocate is what we, always try and say as goals for the CMX Connect. Meet one awesome person, learn something new and actionable thing you can implement, and of course, grow the industry. So we would love you to, become a community manager like us. So hopefully this will be quite the inspiration. Istanbul is where two continents meet. There's nothing like it in the world. Where we also say that when we're sitting in traffic as well. So therefore, it is a massive place, massive city, and it was only fitting that there is a CMX chapter here to talk about community management. As Esra and I were talking, the chapter started in September 2020, and we've been going strong nearly 2 years now. Lots of events. We actually have imposed ourselves some new goals, some interesting additional goals on top of what CMX is asking us to represent. So we would like to be the Turkey's leading platform on community management, to become the leading resource and network for all community managers, professional, novice, candidate, and also to be the first port of call for organizations looking for community professionals and to advocate for community management as a profession. We just have these extra duties because we are the only community managers community in Turkey, which is quite an exciting place to be. This is the address if you would like to check out all our social media outlets, just anything online about CMX Istanbul. If you go to that link, you have links to our Medium channel, which is the only outlet of community management related content in Turkish, plus our social media channels and everything else. Some past events. We've been so lucky to have hosted Katie Ray, again from Clary, and of course, a collaboration with CMX Connect LA, having Beth, who's now Director of Community at Bevy, celebrating our first birthday, yay, and of course, the Community Supremo, the Venerable Mr. John Bacon, was with us last September. We had some more, of course. We had Gamze Nurlioğlu, who's a local celebrity about LinkedIn, and she's the founder of LinkedIn Turkey. And of course, Edu leads the Wix's community team. So some pretty good, guests there. And we were instrumental in supporting some of the big events that had happened last year and of course, previously. CMX Park, which was CMX's conference, EMEA-oriented conference, and CMX Summit. We actually took a great part in helping, organizing, and supporting this event. So we're proud to tell you a little bit more about these. And of course, our guests, Esra and I are on the screen, but Jaran is the master of ceremonies when it comes to the chat box, the virtual environment that you're actually talking to us, chatting with us. And Özge is not with us today, but she's here in spirit. So this is the Three Musketeers, if you like. Of course, we are happy to have more members, people supporting us, and Esra and I will be your on-screen hosts for today, while Jaren will be supporting us through the chat. And these are our organizers. Feel free to reach us if you have any ideas, any feedback, anything that you would like to tell us about events in Istanbul and community management in Turkey and beyond. Without further ado, Tom is probably smiling because I'm just looking at a different screen. I probably can't see because I just had to put this picture. This is something extremely important to me because this was one of the very few co-host sort of meetings that happened in COVID. So Tom is here, and of course I had to put gentleman extraordinaire because I what he is. But the picture on the top is the streets of Valencia where Tom lives. I was very fortunate to be able to travel to that city and then meet Tom in person, which is something extremely valuable these days. So I just wanted to celebrate that great moment, and I sincerely hope that the moment is repeated very, very soon. And I hope, Tom, you liked it. And without further ado, let me present, and let me just, stop my screen. Let me present Tom, who's the community manager at Craft, and of course, a good friend, as you've seen, a great peer, someone that we, find very, very inspirational, and very happy to have here tonight, who's going to be talking us about support.
Thank you so much. It was good to be here.
Fantastic. Very good. So tonight, Esra and I are going to be asking you some really cool and interesting questions, and I sincerely hope that people who are going to be listening to us are going to be enthused, are going to be supported. They will feel that they will be able to get some of the answers about community managers supporting community managers. So we've got some great questions for you, but first, can we hear a little bit about yourself and certainly your great experiences about getting community managers together, because you've done some amazing things and we'd love to hear first.
Yeah, of course. So a little bit of background on me. I've kind of been involved in the community probably for the last 5 years or so, although I only really discovered that there's a whole industry around it about 2 years ago. Before that, it was much more, for example, my first experience was in this amazing cafe in Ljubljana in Slovenia, where I was living for a while. And we had events every single night. And so I was kind of working with the community to build these events, and they're very much community-led events where people would come with ideas, would support them and build them together. And that was really my first taste of what it means to kind of be part of a community and help build a community. And just to fill in, the gaps there, I think it really came from growing up. As a kid, I was always on the outside looking into groups and places and wondering, what it must be like to fit in and belong. I think, that's where a lot of my passion for building communities comes from, is like knowing how important that is, that feeling of belonging, that feeling of, I'm in the right place. So yeah, fast forward a little bit. I've been involved in lots of other communities since that cafe. Some to mention would be Cover, which is a car insurance company in the UK. I helped them to build their community from scratch, and built that out. And more recently, I was working for Daily Prompt, which was one of my best friend's startups, and we essentially, he did everything coding the app, and I did everything community and beyond, like everything else you could think of, and that was really, really fun. But to bring your point about supporting other people. In the beginning, I think it was 2021 or maybe late 2020, I started to form some community mastermind groups. And some of them have disappeared now, but the one that I'm actually still a part of has been one of the most powerful parts of my community journey so far. And it's really something which I completely, inspire you to do, because it's super important. It's really important to my journey, and it's going to be really valuable to yours as well. And I also started a project a little while ago called Connectors Tribe, which had the same intention. It's on pause right now, but it had the same intention. We're all community managers. We're all in this space together, and it's ironically quite a lonely role sometimes, because there's not always the right people close to you to kind of ask questions and be a part of that. So that's a little brief introduction to me.
Fantastic. That's so cool. Ezra, over to you. I know that you have some really, really cool questions, which we're so excited to ask Tom about. So that's just great.
Definitely. For the audience first, so we will be actually talking about community professionals, supporting other community professionals, how and where imposter syndrome is, burnouts, asking and receiving help. So in our first theme, it's about how to prevent, and it starts with being aware of it. So my first question is, what are the major mental health issues and complications that a community manager could face during their professional duties, like burnout, imposter syndrome, stress, or work-related depression, etc.? So.
Mm-hmm. I think this is a really important question to ask. And I think we're particularly vulnerable to potentially suffering from, let's say, mental health issues, if we call it that. And I think that comes from the fact that a lot of us have a lot of empathy. And that's a really good thing, because it means we can connect, we can kind of learn from others really easily. And often we want to serve, we want to really kind of make people feel good and serve them, right? But on the other hand of that, something which is often related is the fact that maybe we don't always prioritize our needs, our importances. And I think that's where often it leads to sometimes some mental health issues, including things, you mentioned it already, burnout is a big one. I think particularly if you're managing multiple time zones, your community is always on, and you've got to rest at some point, but there's always people there. There's always people asking questions, and you can feel incredibly guilty as a community manager not to be responding to these things, not to be actively engaged, particularly when there's problems, particularly when, things are going wrong and it's 2 a.m. your side. It's very difficult to say no and turn off. So I think burnout and stress is a common one. Something I will talk to personally, I've suffered a lot of imposter syndrome. Just in life in general, but particularly in the community space. I think it's wonderful that we can see so many successful, incredible community managers to learn from. But I think sometimes when you're just starting out, you see what they're doing and you see what you're doing, and you're like, crap, I'm useless. I don't know what to do. I haven't got the right idea. And so I think there's a lot of self-doubt involved in every probably career, but in particular right now, maybe we're more vulnerable to it as community managers because there is no official schooling. There's no official almost route to the career. There's like these amazing, CMX is a great resource. You've got other great resources, but there's no official kind of route into it. And I think that means that perhaps you arrive as a community manager, maybe doubting yourself, maybe feeling a bit of imposter syndrome. And the last point I'd touch on, because I think there's kind of three major ones here. I think also the loneliness or depression element can ironically be a part of it too. And I think it varies from person to person, but I think particularly if you're running an online community as a community manager, you're seen to be the leader there, and you might have a great team, you might have great moderators, but sometimes I think we're still alone in knowing where we can find help, knowing where we can kind of get that support from. And that's why I feel it's a really important conversation we're having tonight, and just talking about mental health in general around community is super important.
Most certainly, yes. So, I mean, as somebody who's experiencing community management, how can I say? I would concur. I certainly agree with the things that Tom is saying. So, one of the overarching things, and one of the things that we wanted to touch upon tonight when we were actually designing this event, when we were trying to organize this event, is just to underline that as community managers, we're very selfless people. We really want to just do great things for other people. But of course, the great analogy about the sort of oxygen masks dropping in a plane, we just have to actually put the oxygen mask to ourselves first before we can actually help the other people. So we just tend to forget this. And of course, there are a lot of things that carry over from our past experiences into this job. And certainly, those are the things. It all starts with, I guess, awareness, which is the theme of the part one. And so definitely, it's important for us to understand. And I've also suffered from, various, burnout situations. My record one day was working 21 hours straight, which was just. But it was, I was a young chap back then. I just thought that I would be able to take it. But to be honest with you, just overworking yourself, just completely immersing yourself into work without any safeguards, without any awareness that, of course, there is a limit as a single person, just dealing with a lot of things is always not a good recipe for anything. So it's important to be able to understand that if there's anything that is hindering your progress, and work on it, and just accepting who you are, that we will never be able to become to be perfect people with no issues whatsoever. Everybody's got them, and that's what makes everybody unique. So I would say definitely the things that Tom are saying are very much on point.
Definitely agree with both of you. So actually, these feelings are coming from just to touch the all people in the community. Maybe some of them are expectations from ourselves to be fulfill our job expectations or requirements. And since there is no really objective definition of successful people, we are just pushing harder, and to become the better version of ourselves. And when you mentioned safeguard word, Ilker, I just wanted to ask then, what kind of habits or safeguards that we can have around us to understand, okay, Esra, you are reaching out our limit, then you need to just slow down. So how can we understand? How can we become aware of it?
I mean, I think it's really important to actually give yourself time off early on. Like, don't do it when you need it because you're already burnt out and already stressed. Like, make it a really proactive response. Like, okay, you know what? I don't work weekends, or I switch off at 6, 7, whenever it might be in the evening. And that we can feel very guilty about that, particularly if we've got a 24/7 community. And maybe it does need some more attention, in which case that is something which maybe you can speak to your team to see if you can get extra support, or even the members themselves. If it's a really important community with a lot of things going on, perhaps there's even members who will understand, how important it is, how much it means to you, and how much you can't cope with it. So I think being proactive is super important. So taking time off as soon as possible. And also, I think I keep coming back to this, but building your support network really, really early, I think, is important too. I think we'll come on to that a little bit in more detail later, so I'll hold off the big description until then. But the support network is vital, and CMX, we're part of CMX Connect. They do an incredible job with their Slack channel, and there's so many people you can reach out to for advice, for feedback, for whatever. But what I mean when I say support network is almost like a handful of individuals who you meet with on a regular basis in some kind of mastermind fashion, because these guys, they have your back. They know you. They know how you react to good things, how you react to bad things. And that is priceless. It's one thing to ask a CMX Slack group, like, oh, what should I do if I hit this situation? Or how do I deal with this? But they're answering then as people who don't know you. So asking the same question to people who know you, who understand where you have your benefits and problems, that's really vital. So I think these are the two things I'd say is safeguards to try and prevent burnout and things happening in the first place.
I mean, I would also certainly those are just absolutely vital, crucial, and these should be built right from the outset. So people must understand, as Tom's pointing out, and of course Esra is pointing out, the community management is a heavy job. We're not trying to scare you, but it is. You carry a lot of weight on your shoulders. Certainly, there are other people, you're dealing with people, which is the most unpredictable, let's say, stakeholder that you can actually work with, because you just really don't know, what you're going to be facing with it. So every day is different. You're learning a new thing every day, but that weight actually takes the toll on you. So you really got to take care of yourself, and you really got to be strong. And there are a lot of times that you really need to be a little bit selfish in making sure that you safeguard, the things that are important to you: your rest, your time, your recharging, your complete disconnection from the community. So those are the things that we tend to forget immediately when we find ourselves in the whirlwind of work. So that is something that you need to be aware of. This is a good habit perhaps to have right from the outset. So right now there will be people watching this, and I hope that this is a good thing for them, because now this new generation can actually start their community career right from the outset as their first job. If they can have these habits that Tom and I and Ezra are talking right, then they're able to face the heat of a community management head on.
Definitely. And I actually loved when Tom said, don't do it when you need it. This is actually can be one of the, takeaway quotes that we need to use it, and we need to maybe just say it more. It's really important. And Tom, you also mentioned that people can understand you from your reactions. Are you going happy? Are you nervous? Are you stressed? Like, people around us understand it. It leads me to question, like, how can we enlist other people around us, their help and accountability, without exercising too much pressure on them? How we can help them to be aware that for our workload is become unmanageable, or issues are really affecting us.
Yeah, I think this is one where it comes back a little bit to the personal network, like I mentioned, having that personal group of people. I think that's really vital. That's from a professional perspective. If you can have 3, 4, 5 people around you and you meet regularly, those are great people to go to. Especially because they're in your industry, they will know, what's expected, what's too much, like what they did in this particular situation. So honestly, one of the things I'd really urge people to do is to find your group, make your group. If it doesn't exist, make it. Like, be really proactive and make it. But beyond that, most of us, I hope, do have friends, loved ones, family members, and I think one thing I feel really strongly about is the ability to be vulnerable. And I think it's important that with those people, the people who really do have your back, that you can be vulnerable and show up and be like, you know what, I'm not okay. And that's totally okay to not be okay. And, I think having people around you is really important. So definitely don't hold back with the people who really care about you.
I have a good friend who's suffering from a major mental illness. It's not even it's not weight, it's not anything. It's a proper medical condition, and of course if you haven't encountered it, it's very difficult to deal with, especially looking from the other side. So I would certainly, urge, if you're experiencing any weight on your shoulders, hopefully not a medical situation, but if you're doing that, take some initiative and be very bold in guiding other people on how you want them to help you. So sometimes, if you stay silent, people will assume things and then they will try and help you in their own way, and it may end up hurting you. So really, you don't want that. Just tell them what you really want, whether you want distance, closure, whether you want a close and intimate, let's say, support. So just tell them what you really feel like and tell them what you really want them to do. So this, being clear on this, I think it will make things much easier for the people.
I'll just step in once more there and just mention that, to be super candid for a second, one of my lowest moments was shortly after moving back to the UK, and I moved back in with parents for a while. And less than 1 week after moving back, I felt completely lost. And it was the closest, I've never felt like I've been depressed, but it was the closest I've ever felt to depression. And in that moment, I struggled to think about how to survive till the next day, let alone a week's time or a month's time. And if I was in that position, I don't know if I would be able to tell people what I wanted. I couldn't tell people because I was so lost and so alone that I couldn't kind of find a way to do that, right? But what saw me through then was simply, it's almost distracting yourself, because I think so often we're trying to find a solution, and we're trying to figure out that solution. And it's actually the stepping away from the problem which gives you the best solution. And I think that's slowly what I did. Like I stopped trying to figure it out and get it right, and just gave myself permission to not have a clue for a while. And I think that was really valuable, because then I did have the freedom and the permission to, like I said, not have a clue, and that enabled me just to move forward, and I got to a better place eventually. So definitely, I echo your advice. But even if you don't know what you want, that's okay too. Just move forward. Just do something. Just find a way to distract yourself somehow.
And actually, it's when you describe this, I also feel like, as a junior person, what I just get is I was super stressed, super overwhelmed. Then I just learned the definition of burnout, which is quite late. It was like I just learned it after I have it. So unfortunately, also for the audience that listening us in the future, so most of the time we accept or figure out that there is a problem, so it's too late to prevent because I just learned it by living it. So what could be the best course of action to get into acceptance and solution mindset in this case?
So if you've got it, and you want to turn to the solution, one of the things, kind of echoing what I just said, letting go of perfectionism is a big thing. Like this, we feel like there's huge demands to be perfect. At least I do, and I know a lot of other people do as well. And it's not helped by the fact that social media does portray everybody else's life as perfect. And you see your own and you're like, oh, I'm a piece of crap, and everybody else is doing really great. And so I think letting go of perfectionism is a big thing. And in particular with, with community, for example, like we can't do everything. So if it's not working, if everything we're trying to do isn't working, choose the 1 or 2 things which you can do really, really damn well, and do those to your best. If it's one thing for your community, do that. Like ultimately you're serving your community, but you have to serve yourself first, like Ilka said earlier. And so even if it's just one thing you can do for them, simplify it. Go down to the absolute basics and just do that one thing as well as you possibly can. I think one thing is that. The other thing I think, and I think Ilka touched it a moment ago as well, is self-reflection is super important too. And I do this through a number of ways. Like journaling is one thing I do. I meditate quite frequently. And that just helps you to actually understand what you're feeling. And therefore, you can understand better where the problems might be and where the solutions therefore might be. So if you're stuck in the middle of it, if you're feeling tense and whatever it might be, definitely, take some time out to understand, what's causing this. Like, is it burnout, like you say? Am I feeling stressed? Am I feeling lonely? Am I feeling whatever it might be? And try to find the cause, and also hopefully the solutions will emerge from there as well. Does that answer your question somehow?
Yes, of course. Do you want to add something to it, Ilkay?
I think those are just sort of great advices to to deal and to understand and to frame the situation. The fact that we are not perfect, I really think that it cannot be underlined enough in this conversation and in today's world. So of course, the sort of perfection or the perfect image is not something new. It always existed even before social media, but today it's even more, let's say, pronounced. And people find themselves under a lot of pressure, professionally and personally now. In the previous times, it was only about sort of professional pressure, where the personal one was just around your circle. So now we feel like we just need to prove to the world that we are really cool people. So, but to be honest with you, just like everybody else, we have our own worries, we have our own issues, that we don't even know they exist. And sometimes, just out of nowhere, they just slam themselves into the room, and then basically sit down and stay with you for a long time. So I guess accepting the arrival of these solutions, of these situations, and then basically try and see what you can do to learn more about the situation, and then basically try and see how much you can actually uncover from your past, from your from the back of your mind. I think it could be a good thing just to reflect on it, just like Tom's saying, maybe do some journaling, maybe do some self-reflection, maybe do some complete disconnection, as Tom was also saying. So those are things that help you grasp and understand. Sometimes you just look at it, it looks like a dinosaur, it looks like a big elephant that you can't really wrap your hands around it. But to be honest with you, it only starts with just the first step, just to acknowledge the size of it. So I would certainly think that, trying to find different ways, if one way doesn't work, try another one to see if you can actually grasp the situation, to understand and feel the enormity of the problem, or the four corners of the problem, so to speak, and then basically and a way out could be more easily apparent.
Definitely. Actually, I was about to ask about some immediate actions that people can have to deal with the situation, but you already actually answered that, covered that. And for the ones who is listening, so they are basically just to leave the perfectionism and just moving on and doing, even it's small, doing it, I think, to just move on. Maybe meditation, maybe writing it down, can be journaling. And also for me, since it's happening for me, I'm over expecting from myself, and it just challenges me a lot. Then what I do is I'm going to the gym and I'm pushing myself physically. Then when I just feel like, okay, I did it, I do feel a lot powerful about the problem that I'm dealing with, and then it just gives me the push that I need to. So that might also help to you. So actually, this leads me our last question of team 2, sorry. So I will read it out basically. So, one of the biggest challenges for any mental issue, however light or deep it is, lies with the people around us. And sometimes the last thing that we want is for people to give us advice. And what's the best immediate course of action or position to take when we find ourselves seeing a community colleague or a friend or a loved one going through a situation like this?
Yeah, so I think on the one hand, we're pretty good at this anyway as community professionals, because we are very empathetic and we do like to build spaces which allow people to kind of be themselves and open up, right? So I think partly we do this in our communities, and it's time for us to do it within our, let's say, personal groups or our peer groups as well. But the other the other addition I would say to this, particularly when it comes to doing the same with community managers, is some of us, myself included, aren't particularly good at being the center of attention, the one who should be speaking, the one who should be. So if anything, when dealing with community managers, you might have to be a bit more proactive there, like almost give them permission. Okay, this is your space. Like, how can I help? Tell me what's in your mind, and keep repeating, like, okay, and what else? Like, how can I help? And I think that's a key thing, particularly with us unique kind of community managers who are very sensitive, very empathetic, and really just want to help and serve people. And just even beyond community managers, listening is the most important thing. People don't want solutions, right, most of the time, or if they do, they don't want your solutions. If you just start throwing solutions at them, often it feels like you're not being heard properly. Like they don't, unless they've really listened to you first, solutions feel kind of empty, right? So definitely listening and giving people space are two things that I think are super important if somebody's in a bad place and you want to help them out.
It is just key. So Tom is very, very much right on this, in the sense that the listening skills is just one skill that we sorely lack in this day and time anyway. So this is hopefully some good advice for the newer generation, because just like the sort of cliche saying says, we now are not really hearing to listen, but we're sort of waiting and hearing just to reply. So basically, to actively listen and to understand the other person's situation, it really requires some muscle to be built. It's also about to understand. It's also about to care. And it really shows in the way that you reply, the way that you actually sit there and actually support and listen to this person. So that is something that I would certainly recommend anyone around someone who's actually experiencing these to exercise, to grow, and to make the other person feel that you are there for them. It doesn't really mean that you're just taking the other person by their shoulder and just saying, I am there for you. It's more like basically just being silently there, being there when they actually need them, and just making sure that you tell them that you're only going to be appearing, you're only going to be supporting whenever they want you to. So this friend that I've been talking to you about, so that was my biggest challenge, because it was something that I encountered for the first time in my life, something that deep, something that scarring, something that difficult to handle for me, and I really didn't know what to do. So in the end, I actually had to resort to partly to some professional resources, where I just read what some psychologists and of course a few other people in in the profession were actually saying. And partly I sort of opened up to my friend and I just said, look, what do you want me to do? I really don't know how to deal with this. And maybe perhaps, just like Tom said, you really don't know what you want me to do, but in the end, I just be sure that I will be doing whatever you want me to do, whether you know it or not. So you just guide me, or basically just speak to me, talk to me, and say anything that you want that comes to your head whenever you're actually talking to me. And then we're just going to see this through, and we will establish a structure through which I'm going to be able to support you. So this is one thing that I would recommend. It may not work out, but just being open with the other person. Just tell them that you would like to support them. You would like to tell them, wish them well. So basically, just being open is a great start, I find.
Yeah, and just to add on to the back of that, sorry. I think the biggest, whenever you're in a really dark space, one of the biggest causes of that is disconnect. You feel disconnected from others, you feel disconnected from the world, disconnected from yourself even. And that's all when, again, this is from limited, I'm not a professional psychologist or anything like that, but from my experience, the most important thing in that dark place is simply having somebody who cares, like more than anything else. You might often we want to fix the problem for somebody else, and often we can't, right? We are not a psychologist. We can't necessarily fix the problem for them, but what we can do is care. And I think we do it damn well as community professionals. And that's all people need often, is just care, just love and care. And I think that's where we can start whenever looking after somebody else.
That's so.
Yeah, and it's really reliable about, what you say when you mention about listening silently. It's really important thing to do, because lately a lot of people are just listening to answer what you're saying. So just maybe sometimes keeping it quiet, because giving them space to talk and express their feelings can really help us a lot. And actually, what we did is, till now, we mentioned about awareness, and we mentioned about how ways to do it. And now you mentioned about some professional resources and some professional support. So then we can go for the healing team. So healing actually is an extremely complicated process, and sometimes it happens immediately, sometimes it takes time, sometimes it never does. And it might sound personal, but when would you say that the need arises to seek professional help as the community manager, or consider ourselves on the top of the situation?
I mean, again, like you said, it's personal, and not. I don't necessarily mean that from too personal to speak about. I mean, it's very different for everyone. Like, some people may never need it. Some people, I think there's a lot of benefit in it. For myself, I started going to therapy last year, I think October, November. And what triggered it for me, it was something I'd been curious about for a long time. But what really triggered it is my confidence got severely knocked for quite a few months on end. And I found it disrupting. It's one thing to feel like low confidence, but it's one thing when it starts disrupting all areas of your life. So it was disrupting how I was with friendships. It was disrupting how I felt in work. It was disrupting pretty much every level of my life. And that's when I was like, look, I need to take an action here, because my entire life is being affected by this thing, which if I, speak to somebody, perhaps I can get through it. So I think that's the biggest thing, is just noticing how, is this just something which pissed you off one day? Is this just something which you feel from time to time? Or if it's really having a big impact on multiple areas of your life, consider it. And it shouldn't be spoken about with a stigma, because it's not. It's actually, I would love to see a world where everyone has a therapist, in the same way everyone goes to the doctor if they need something from the doctor, because I see it in very much the same way. It's, most of us could benefit from having somebody to share stuff which is on our chest and to think about things differently. And I think it's a gift if you've got the chance to go to see one. So yeah, that's what I'd say.
Most definitely. I mean, my wife is a dietitian, so she's a nutritional advisor. So basically, what I've discovered is that just of course, after needing this sort of intervention is just one dynamic, but just having it just before, and basically doing some preventative maintenance, put it that way, on yourself, it could be something wonderful to do. And I completely subscribe to what Tom is saying, that the having a therapist or getting professional help, it should never be any sort of stigma, especially for people like us, community managers, or doing something that is so connection heavy and intense. There are so many times that the community work is going to wear us out on many levels. It will actually play on our own personal insecurities. The situations will actually get on top of us, and they will overwhelm. These are things that I guarantee that they will happen. There is no soul in the world that will be, just dealing with community work day in, day out, that will not be affected. So there will come a time in your profession that you will be under the weather because of, whatever has happened in the community domain. I can guarantee you this. It's the quicker you actually have a structure to deal with it and accept that this will happen. And this, of course, is valid for many other professions, but for us, it is very intense. Not to scare you off, but it is one of the most wonderful jobs in the world. But of course, there's a price to pay, just like for any wonderful job in the world. So Therefore, just having access to therapy, whether it is online, in person, or maybe some light therapy, just like we're trying to do a little bit today. Having some peers, some mentors, someone to talk to, even when you're not really feeling like you're needing professional help, is key. So I'm going to go back to what Tom has been saying in the beginning of the conversation, is to have a support network. It could comprise of people like us. It could comprise of people who are experienced, they know how to deal with things. People like Tom, who's experienced the feelings and knows how to approach you. And of course, professional people. Just have a mixture of them, and then basically try and figure out when you would need to do the jump. So completely on point, Tom, just like everything you're saying this evening.
So I would like to also add my experience in this. And as a person who just started getting therapies when I had my first burnout, I'm still having a regular therapy session. I have like once in a week, and it's really helps me a lot. And I may want to really, we should actually normalize this, because now what I feel is it's actually like self-care to me, like skincare, when you do as a woman, like, when I just go to a barbershop or whatever. So it's actually a care for my emotions and my feelings. So I think it's just a normal thing that we need to do. It's all about how you manage your stress. Even nowadays, I don't need it for managing stress, but I'm using it to understand myself more. Why I'm doing this? Well, how can I help these people? How can I be better? So it's always a good to have. You don't really must need to do it to start. You can just, do it for your own good. And believe me, it's really helps you. Even it changed my way to communicate with people. And I really now can help other people to open up better, because there are somebody professional who helped me to open up. So it's really helped me a lot. And actually, I wanted to ask you, what are the things and actions worked out for you that help you for heal and overcome? We mentioned about therapy, and do you want to mention about other things that really help you to deal with these issues?
Sure. And first of all, I'm really glad that that's helped you and you've had a really positive response to therapy. Like it's honestly, it's something which I think, like you said, we should normalize it because it's super important. And I love the reference you made to like skincare. We wouldn't, you would not brush your teeth in the evening, for example, right? But we, for some reason, go our entire lives without seeking extra help to become a better person. So you're spot on there. And I really, really like what you said. So other things I've tried to kind of overcome stuff like this. One thing we've mentioned already, and I'll keep reiterating this because I think it's super important, is finding a support network. Like honestly, if you take one thing away from this chat this evening, go out there and find those 3, 4, 5 people who you'd like to chat with. If you don't know where to look, or if you can't find them, reach out to me. I'll give my Twitter or email address at the end. Because there's definitely people out there. There's people like you who will be searching for other community professionals just like you. So support network is huge and is key. Other things which really work, taking proper time off, and proper time off, not time off where you pretend to take time off, but you still check from time to time what's going on in the community, but like really deleting the community platform from your phone, like throwing your laptop in a cupboard and locking it for 3 days, like really taking proper time off to lose yourself in something else. And particularly, hobbies really help. Like I've recently started climbing as a hobby or bouldering as a hobby. And this kind of stuff is great because you can't think about community while you're climbing up a rock or climbing up a wall, because if you do, you're likely to fall. So, anything which you can do, which just fully takes you away from your problems at work, whatever you're stressed about, I think is really, really useful. And when it comes to, overcoming the problems in the first place, definitely, asking for help from your community themselves. First of all, your team, your internal team, people there might be able to offer extra work, whether they're community professionals or in a different department or whatever. But in particular, your community too. Like often you've got passionate individuals in there who, want to help, who want to see the community survive and thrive. and helping those guys, giving them the resources, giving them the ability to kind of support the community further. Often they're really excited to do so. And yeah, I think that's the three things I've tried, and all have been really, really useful for me.
Really, really cool, suggestions, and definitely the hobbies bit is very important. Now it's when you talk about normalizing, it just made me remember a lot of the things are turning around in a very interesting ways these days. So now, for example, in 2022, the HR professionals are asking us to leave hobbies out of our CVs because it's taking too much valuable of a space, but to be honest with you, that implies, to us to actually leave hobbies out of our lives too. So our lives is not just work. Whether it's a heavy work like community management, or whether it's just let's say lighter work where you're just dealing with a computer or a system or whatever you are doing. Certainly, there has to be a time, just like Tom said, of some disconnection, and we should not forget about the hobbies or anything like that. So those are there to really keep us sane, to keep us, on a certain level of, let's say, mental fitness. So it's important to, keep them going, and some support network, or the things that you're doing that are completely detached out of out of what you're doing on a day in, day out. A lot of people suffered from severe and prolonged burnout in the last couple of years because they were, of course, confined to their homes by a number of reasons. But that also meant that, of course, they actually disconnected themselves from anything, from their personal lives, from their hobbies or anything, and everything just became a screen. Don't do this. Of course, the things are getting slightly better now in some parts of the world, but even if they go back to where they were, just don't do it. Let's take this as a lesson to be learned, and then basically try and see if we can actually have a complete disconnection one way or the other, whether it's a physical disconnection where you just completely leave the room that you're working in for, during your rest time, or, some other things. So certainly, these are the things that really would really, really help you, to get better in one way or the other.
Yeah, and I'd just like to add on to the back of that, like that's something I'm particularly curious about right now, and it's something which I'm very passionate about trying to find an answer to, is, having places to belong off of screens. Like we spend so much time behind our screens, and we've got so many online communities, and they're fantastic. I can connect with you guys in Istanbul, I'm in Spain, and people from all over the world can connect, and that is miraculous and amazing, and I love it. But I do feel like often a craving for real life too. I want to go belong somewhere in real life. I want a club to join. I want to be part of something here in person. So definitely, hopefully as things continue to open up, we can do more of that. And yeah, connect in real life too.
And first of all, definitely. And I would like to add up with a question asking, like, is there anything that we can do collectively, or are there any organizations, channels, or circles that that could be helped? Because in my side, what I see is mostly in Netflix. Actually, I just see it, and they are mentioning about wannatalkaboutit.com, mostly about violence, mental health, well-being, self-harm, or suicide, sometimes about bullying. So do you know any organizations, channels, or circles that could be helpful for others?
Honest answer is I don't actually know of any with that particularly in mind. I mean, just for looking for support, like one of the key things I spoke about was finding support in a peer group. So just CMX is an incredible resource of incredible people. So for just finding your support group to try and minimize the risk of you even burning out or getting stressed or getting imposter syndrome in the first place, definitely check out the CMX channel, find your community, find your support group. And I don't know, there are definitely other resources out there, like even for meditation apps, which can help you just to kind of get clearer mind in the first place. And there's definitely, other local resources wherever you are, which can help you with the other kind of mental support. I must admit, I was put off for a long time looking for a therapist because it was overwhelming to know where to look. And I don't know if there is a good problem for that. I know there's some search engines for therapists, but all of it never felt so great. So I think it's a definite problem that needs to be solved, but ask around locally. Like I eventually found mine through a local Facebook group. So definitely just look in your local area, whether it's amongst community managers, whether that's amongst people in your physical local area. Kind of ask your network and see what your network brings to you.
Well, that's actually interesting, just as we're approaching the final minutes, it's an interesting business opportunity as well. So if you're a psychologist, if you're a professional in the field, certainly this is one area that is severely lacking. So imagine if you're basically doing, if you actually have a degree, have experience, and you've entered into the world of community. So certainly this is one area, one specialism that could be, that could be utilized towards providing some really valuable services to us community managers. But until then, as Tom is saying, building your support network, and of course, places like CMX is just absolutely great. A lot of sincere, candid discussions are taking place on Slack, and of course, on other places as well. And of course, there are also some other support groups, which I have also joined, a little bit like Tom, and of course, a little bit like what Tom was spearheading some time ago. So certainly, the discussions there are very valuable. And just I always sort of think of this sort of movie cliche where you have the Alcoholics Anonymous, where people just get up and just say, I now confirm, I sort of admit that I'm an alcoholic, and sort of thing. Of course, that may be just maybe one dimensionalizing this, but at the end of the day, I guess that sort of admittance, or at least finding a safe place where you can actually share a few things that you're going through, is a great step. So as Tom is saying, just be sure to have that outlet. I think most of the time, just like Tom is saying about professional help, we just don't know where to look. Professional help is one thing, but having an outlet where you can actually have a safe, trusted circle of people who are keen to, who can possibly understand what you're going through, I think is key. And I think, for me anyway, is one thing that you should take away from tonight's conversation.
Definitely. And while we are talking, I actually checked the CMX Slack, and I noticed that we don't have a channel for it, actually. And maybe for the sake of this event, maybe we can ask for it, and we can also share this video recording, because ironically, the community managers who needs to watch this probably is pushing so hard and even postponing to join in this event. So I think this is something that we need to do for the sake of this event, because this is what I did before. Because I was feeling super overwhelmed, but I was really trying to finish the task before. So I was always adding things to my reading list, my watching list, but not doing it. So I think we should do something for it.
I love that idea. That's a great idea.
That's spot on, really, like spot on. I will make sure that CMX and also other networks, they actually get that message. This is really, really.
And to step up our final question, we are really going super on time. So do you have any resources to fellow community read and consume towards greater awareness, like books, maybe videos, maybe some courses?
Yeah, I mean, I'll mention 2 books. Both have been influential in my life at different times. Maybe 3 books. The first one I'd mention is The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. It was a great book. Actually, the first time I read it, it didn't connect with me so much. And then I read it again about 6 months later, and it was like I read a totally different book. It was the right time to read that book, and it really changed me. And the biggest thing that I learned there, which I think is super important based on what you said a moment ago, Ezra, is the fact that you are not your thoughts. Like, we always have this narrator in our mind telling us we're not good enough unless we do this, this, and this, and this. And it's very active, it's very busy, and realizing that you're not actually that narrator and you're the thing observing that narrator gives you this whole kind of power and kind of detachment from that, which is really freeing and liberating. So Power of Now was a great book. It's something which I read a long time ago and I'm planning to come back to, is Essentialism by, I think it's Greg McKeown or Greg something. It's basically, it's how to do less. I can't remember, it's got a catchy title, but like how to do less is essentially it. And I think, it focuses on like how do you do the one or two few things, which is super important. And I think the book even says like there's only one priority. Like priority is one thing. So just do one thing incredibly well rather than try to do a million things like most of us try to do. So I think these are two great reads for this kind of thing.
That's so cool. I'll add my resource, just one. I absolutely love Timothy Ferris. I don't know if anyone's who's just listening to this, whether it's on recording or live, just knows him. But he's a New York Times bestseller, and he's the author of 4 Hour Working Week. He's got this fantastic blog as well. And his best-selling book, 4 Hour Working Week, starts with a mental breakdown, actually, which is quite interesting. So definitely that's one book to read. And he's also a big aficionado of Stoicism. So basically things like sort of fear setting, where you just, go through what will be your worst fear, what will be the worst situation, and then basically just normalizing that. And that gives you a lot of strength and confidence to carry through. So I would definitely recommend these books because he's put a lot of thoughts beyond onto basically just managing day-to-day tasks and some heavy tasks as well in trying to become successful. So that's just my thing. He really some of these perspectives really helped me a lot. So on top of Tom's recommendations, which I haven't read, but I will heartily read. So I think we're bang on time, Esra. So which is a first for a Mediterranean chapter like Istanbul.
Definitely. And we were actually really great to cover up everything and all the questions that we are going through. I just want to remind you to all listeners that you are the most important thing in your life and you are the main character of your life. So just be aware of it and behave like how will you behave the most important character in your life? It's yourself.
Amen.
Definitely. So Tom, thank you so much. This has been a lovely conversation. It was like, some people just sitting in a room, some good friends just chatting about, some really important topics with so great ease. And Giovanna, thank you for your lovely message. You're so kind in, devoting your time as well. And Jaren's been, of course, wonderful in sharing everything that we're reading on social media as well. So Tom, any closing remarks from you?
Yeah, I mean, I'd just say two things. One is like we've painted some of the negative aspects of community management and also life today, but there are some huge highs as well. Like, you've touched on it already. It's one of the best jobs you could think about. It's one of the most meaningful jobs, giving people places to belong, to connect. So there are huge highs, but obviously what comes with huge highs is sometimes big lows too. So definitely highlighting that. And the other thing is, if anyone is listening and if anyone has other questions, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter, for example. I am Tom Norman on Twitter. If you search that, it should come up and you can connect with me, ask questions, whatever you want. So feel free to reach out.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Tom. You've been so kind, gentleman extraordinary. You lived up to your let's say reputation. Certainly one of the nicest people to talk to anytime. So Esra, any closing remarks from you?
You can just go and close it. Thank you.
Fantastic. This has been CMX Istanbul, where two continents meet. So thank you for listening. Thank you for your time in being with us this evening. We hosted Tom Norman from Craft, and we talked about some very important things about community managers supporting each other. So this recording will be up shortly on CMX Connect YouTube channel. Please follow Tom Norman. I am Tom Norman on social media, on Twitter, and of course CMX Istanbul, us, and of course on Menilink as well, which was at the beginning of this presentation. So the event will be ending. Thank you for joining. Thank you, Tom, for coming. Thank you, Esra, for being the magnificent co-host, and the same goes to Jaren as well. All the very best. Have a wonderful Monday evening, and see you at the next one.
See you, everyone.
See you.